Foundation. We at the Foundation are delighted to welcome you all to the second International Faculty Development Program for History Teachers on Pedagogy of Teaching History. The program is being organized by Kaash Foundation Center for Academic and Professional Development in collaboration with the University of Ottawa, Canada, and St. Xavier's Institute of Education, Mumbai, spanning across 7 days, that is from today, the 3rd of August to Sunday, the 9th of August. The second International Faculty Development Program witnessed the extreme presence of 13 scholars from the fields of education, history, archaeology, and archival studies, etc. Kaash Foundation embarked on its academic endeavor with the first international multidisciplinary conference on transition and transformation, citizen life, literature, and culture, Mumbai chapter on 17th and 18th February 2020. The conference was held in collaboration with Mumbai University's Institute of Distance and Open Learning at the Firoza Mehta Auditorium in the university at Kalina campus. The resounding success of its first international multidisciplinary conference, then Kaash Foundation organized its second international event, which was a symposium on concern, complexities, and dialogues in religious philosophies. The symposium was held on 12th May 2020 in collaboration with Vidya Kirti Foundation, Universitas Hindu Indonesia, Archaeological Institute of Afghanistan, Indian Council of Historical Research, New Delhi, Center for Study of Society and Secularism, Mumbai, and Ekam Resonance Foundation, Mumbai. On 25th May 2020, Kaash Foundation CAPD organized the third international conference on colossal and collateral challenges for sustainable environment. Our collaborator for the conference was the University of Ottawa, Canada. In association with Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center, Colombo, Sri Lanka, Global Knowledge Academic Spain, and St. Andrew Center for Philosophy and Performing Arts, Mumbai, Kaash Foundation's CAPD organized its fourth international conference on trajectories and intersections in writings of history and literature. The conference was conducted on 30th May 2020. The fifth International Conference on Integrated Approaches of Research in Humanities and Social Sciences was organized by Kaash Foundation CAPD on 3rd June 2020. The conference was held in collaboration with Al-Azhar University, Iran, and Chinmaya Vishwa Vidyapeeth, Ernakulam, Kerala. Kaash Foundation CAPD also organized the sixth International Conference on Emerging Trends of Research in Art, Aesthetics, and Social Sciences. The conference was held in collaboration with Global Knowledge Academic Spain and Sagar University, Madhya Pradesh on 8 June 2020. Kaash Foundation's seventh international endeavor was the Chief Executive Officer webinar on strategy to strengthen industry academics collaboration in emerging economy. The webinar was held on 12th June 2020 in collaboration with the Mumbai University Alkesh Dinesh Modi Institute of Financial and Management Studies. Along with this, in order to enhance teaching skills and provide opportunities for academic excellences to faculty and development educational institutions, Kaash Foundation has also initiated faculty development programs. The first faculty development program on research methodology in history was organized from 25th May to 30th May. Held in collaboration with the Directories of Archaeology and Museum of Maharashtra, the faculty development program was based on the theme of Historian's Compass and Tools. The FDP conducted over a period of 6 days witnessed the extreme presence of 12 resource persons. Now, on behalf of Kaash Foundation, I once again welcome you all to the second International Faculty Development Program on Pedagogy on Teaching History organized by Kaash Foundation CAPD in collaboration with University of Ottawa, Canada, and St. Xavier's Institute of Education, Mumbai. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Kamini Gogri on behalf of Dr. Anne Vallely from University of Ottawa, who is also our collaborative partner for the second faculty development program. Since Dr. Anne Vallely could not join us, she has sent her endorsement for the faculty development program. Ma'am, over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of Anne Vallely, I present her support to Kaash Foundation. Dear Dr. Avkash Jadhav, founder trustee, Kaash Foundation, and director of CAPD, I am extremely happy to support the faculty development program conducted by Kaash Foundation. It is indeed the hour to rethink, rework, reinterpret, regenerate history and teaching history to young minds. Historical consciousness is not only about data collection, but about understanding the events in that space and time. History is about a time travel. Therefore, it is an adventurous and a journey of excitement. The challenging aspect is to infuse this overwhelming aspect of history and learning and teaching history in a way that will encourage to think, to raise doubt, to inquire, to delve deep into the subject, which is an important aspect of ourself and society. I'm sure this program will infuse a new vision, a new thought process, and create a history by itself. My association with Dr. Akash, though, is a recent one, but it is as if I have known him through a long time. I know him as a very warmly and a supporting human being to uplift young minds, scholars academically, but also through his activism. I wish him and Kaash Foundation all the success for the FTPs and all such future endeavors. I was happy to collaborate in an international conference on environmental challenges. I apologize for being unable to participate due to certain unavoidable circumstances. Once again, I wish a very grand success for this program. Thank you.
We would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Anne Vallely from University of Ottawa, Canada, for endorsing the FDP, and Dr. Kamini Gogri for all her support in getting this collaboration. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Blaise D'Souza, SJ, Managing Trustee of St. Xavier's Institute of Education, Mumbai, for the inaugural address. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. I can't see any image here. Hello.
Father, we can see you. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much for inviting me to this inaugural address. I would like to begin by saying that actually I'm not a historian as such. I specialized in economics, and most of my life was spent in working in the rural areas of Maharashtra, particularly the Adivasi villages of Nandurbar, Shirpur, Thane district, Raigad district. So 34 years I spent in different types of developmental activities, conscientization programs, and things that could empower Adivasis mainly and other rural people. So that has been the background that I have. History is something that I mainly studied in school, and I would hardly consider myself as an expert in history. And yet, as a part of my own experience, particularly out in the rural areas, I began to wonder what the history of people at the grassroots level was. We learned in school, maybe in college to some extent, all major historical events that have taken place. And I began to raise certain questions for myself with regard to what is the role of history in the process of development, particularly development of people out, poor people out in the rural areas. And that's where I began to raise certain questions which I thought maybe those who are specialized in history and those who are learning history would perhaps take up and seek to understand not just history of major events. History is not merely a narration of facts, figures, and dates, not merely an enumeration of political events that have shaped history, the history of the past. There is more to history than political events. It is not merely the story of kings, princes, and emperors, nor is it merely the description of conquests, invasions, and colonization. There is more to history than meets the eye. It is not merely a history of events at the global and national or even regional levels. History needs to go down to the local villages and grassroots to understand what shapes the life of people at the grassroots level. I think this is very important. Somehow or the other, nobody writes the history of people down at the grassroots level. History is written of very major figures, political movements. And so there is very little that we understand of the history of people down at the grassroots level. There is need to make a deeper critical analysis of history. I think this is something that I thought should be introduced into the learning of history. In school, we learned a lot of historical events and data of dates and of important figures, important conquests, important invasions. And perhaps those are the things that we remember. The question that arises in my mind is what is not just what happens in history, but how these things happen and why particularly they happen. Why do particular events take place in history? Most of the time, history tends to speak and we tend to remember the political events that are enumerated in history books. But it is not enough for us to know what happened in the past, but how and why it happened. The question is not of repeating past history, but to analyze history, to create new history in the present, and to move forward towards the future. We can never deny our historical roots, but like a tree, history means being well and deeply rooted in the past, in all that is rich of the past, in our culture, in our background, in our traditions, and yet striking new roots and sprouting new branches that will enrich us all and be more fruitful for the future. Hence, the study of history for us must be a challenge to change, create new history, and leave the future to more progressive changes and transformation. So, having said this, what I would always place before our students in the B.Ed college is not just events that took place in the past. You know, often when I have had to speak at certain national events, national days like Independence Day or Republic Day, reference is always made to the history of the past. 70 years ago, we gained independence. And then perhaps a little bit of delving on what we lost in the past. We were colonized, we were plundered, we lost a lot of our natural resources, we lost our freedom. And this perhaps always tends to be the way we look at these important days, looking on the past, those who conquered us, those who ruled us, and all that happened because of their rule, all the evil, all the plundering. And yet I would, after 70 years, I would try to tell our students, I said, look here, we cannot always blame the past for the present. The past is gone. The British have left us. It is necessary for us to create a new history of our own. It is necessary for us to take responsibility for what happens to us here and now. We might remember these past events, but we need to move beyond from there. We need to create new history. And we need to resolve the weaknesses that have been there because of certain negative experiences of our past history. And in order to do that, we perhaps need to introduce the element of social analysis, critical analysis into history. We need to add these other dimensions of social analysis, which are not merely political, but which delve into the social, cultural, economic reasons that have affected our history over the centuries. And it is this understanding of what has affected our history or how it has had its impact on the social situation, on the cultural situation, on the economic situation. It is this understanding that will help us to, in a way, probe and reach the roots and causes of different negative events, negative things that may exist in our present history. We need to be dynamic. History needs to be dynamic. History is not something that we just receive from the past, but it is something that after we have received it, we work in order to change the situation, to transform the situation. And unless you know the social, political, economic, and cultural reasons and causes behind different historical events, we will remain with this history of the past. There are certain things, for example, in the history of the past, which still pervade, which need to change. In 1951 or 1950, we became a republic. We gave ourselves a democratic constitution, which was in a way an attempt to move beyond the past, beyond the impact and effects of colonization or of conquest by outsiders and the legacy that it left. There are rich things in this legacy, and yet there are also weaknesses. What is rich, we preserve for the present and carry on into the future. What is negative and what is weak, we need to work on to remove. So we cannot just boast of our past history without thinking of moving into the future, without thinking of taking responsibility for the present in our hands. The past is there. We learn from the past. Perhaps we correct things which are of the past, still pervade our society and our ethos. And perhaps we need to, like a tree, have deep roots into our past, into our history. We can never deny our history. It is part of our being, part of our lives. And yet, like a tree, we have to sprout and strike out new branches that will enrich our present history and help us to be more fruitful in the future. And this is what I would often try to put across to people out in the villages, very simple people, but who needed to take their destiny into their own hands and not to be caught up in the past. They needed to get into areas which perhaps historically they never thought were theirs. Education was not theirs. Other people got very, very highly educated. But Adivasis were supposed to remain in the background. They were expected to live in the forest. They were expected to be very, very primitive. And so it was our effort to help them discover their history in order to analyze it and understand why they have remained backward, why they have not been able to give up certain things which are of a negative nature. I believe that Adivasis have a rich culture that they have brought with them. Culture particularly which has got to do with the protecting of the environment and promotion of the environment, safeguarding nature. This is something that I learned from Adivasis. We are not people who live in a vacuum. Our history is created in the midst of the environment that we live in. And this means that the environment is also part of our history. And if we, as a people, as a group, as people in villages and people in cities and towns, if we are not able to safeguard the environment as a historical legacy that we have received and promote it for the future, we might end up having destroyed our history. We will have destroyed the very context in which our life takes place, where we are born, where we grow, where we develop, where we get educated, where we work, not just to exploit the environment, but to enrich it so that it enriches us, so that we are able to live by what the environment provides for us. And therefore, I had to sit with people and say, okay, what was your past? What was your history? What do you remember? See, they were people with an oral tradition more than written history. And so you have to build their history for them so that it would give them an identity with a history. From where they came, who are their forefathers, from where they moved, from where they migrated, how they developed the land. So this was a process of trying to understand, or to analyze their situation, their condition, so that they could move forward in the process of development and create a new history for themselves. It is this that I look at when we are considering now and studying the pedagogy of history. What is it that we teach our students and student teachers? What are teachers going to teach their students? A lot of information of the past, or also help the students to ask these questions. Why did this war take place? Why did the Second World War take place? Why others came and conquered our territories? What have we done about it? What are the social causes behind whatever has happened in history? The economic causes and impact. Have they been positive, or have we lost in the process? So the root causes of whatever has happened in history, socially what has happened, culturally what has happened, economically what has happened, this is something that our students have to learn to analyze and make a critique so that they can pinpoint the root causes negative things in history and say, what are the decisions that we take? What are the policies that we are going to have so that we create a new history for ourselves and for the future. This is my hope from this whole webinar, this whole sessions that you all are having for the faculty development, for student teachers, those who are going to be teachers, so that they make our students question things that have happened in history and look for ways and means to resolve the problems that we have, in a way, got from history, and change the situation so that we create a new history, a new legacy for the future. This is my hope from this whole pedagogy, this whole seminar, or this 6-day training program on pedagogy for history. Thank you all very much. I wish you all the best, and I hope, and I'm sure it will be a very successful seminar that you are going to have, workshops that you are going to have for the next 5 or 6 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I would like to invite our founder trustee of Kaash Foundation and director of CAPD, Dr. Afkaz Jadhav, for the introduction of Kaash Foundation and concept note. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Megha. Thank you very much. We once again welcome you to the second International Faculty Development Program, as is rightly stated by Megha in her introduction. The first International Faculty Development Program was on historians' compass and tools. And as we know that as a teacher, we need to evolve. And a good teacher, in fact, I would rather say, keeps on learning, and that is the better way of evolving. And we strongly believe teaching is not merely performing our duty, teaching is an art. Teaching is basically science. And as students and learners and teachers of history, we need to kind of blend these both aspects of performance as well as dissemination of information and knowledge as such. And for that, we thought we would engage in faculty development program where teaching of history should be taken up. As Aristotle had rightly said once, teaching is the highest form of understanding. So as teachers, what perhaps we studied in our school and what we today teach our students is quite different. History has changed. History has in fact tried to unfold itself in various approaches. So looking at some of these aspects, we looked at this entire pedagogy of teaching history. To give you insight about Kaash Foundation is an NGO, it's a trust based in Mumbai, established in October 9, 2019. And we've been working on 4 verticals, E2, H2, education, environment, health, and heritage. Under the vertical of education, we have tried to come up with an allied body, Center for Academic and Professional Development, which will be taken up quite strongly and explained to you in a more vivid manner by Dr. Geeta Ajit. But at Kaash Foundation, we try to act as catalysts. We try to engage in all those aspects where we should return back to the society. It is high time that we have this kind of an exchange and we engage in a manner where we do not only just receive, we also give back. And this entire exercise of pedagogy of teaching history is an outcome of that. So what is that we are looking at end of this entire 7-day program in collaboration with the University of Ottawa, Canada, and St. Xavier's Institute of Education, Mumbai? What is that we are looking at? We are looking at the capacity building here. As teachers, we need to also engage in the aspects where we not only enhance our teaching, but also try to empower the students for the future course of action as good citizens also. What we look at here as outcome is to develop professional competencies, because this entire new normal, in fact, has taken us to all different pedestal, and we need to adapt to this new technology, the online lecture series, the class, the sessions, the discussions. how we try to forward the information to the student is something which we need to be very careful about, because now on various occasions it is not just the child or the student, we also have the parents who also listen to us, and as teachers, in fact, our responsibility is always under the scanner. And when we deal with a subject like history, I remember a very strong quote by Chanakya when he stated that Nirman or Pralay ek shikshak ki god mein palta hai. So this is the importance of a teacher. A teacher can mold you, and a teacher can in fact also push you towards the path of destruction. Apart from that, we also expect the teachers to learn the new approaches. As you know, we have a very strong lineup of stalwarts. They are all erudite scholars, and they have been trying to set a new benchmark in teaching history for that matter. And we are quite fortunate to have their consent for all these lecture series. And I'm sure the new approaches they'll try to unfold through their sessions will add a certain value to our teaching. And I'm sure after 7 days, we can always say that we are one edge above than what we were on 3rd of August. Apart from that, we also want to motivate the teachers. Teaching as a career, as a profession, is not anymore that lucrative. It has become too demanding. It has become too challenging. We have to be always and constantly on our toes. There are various participants in this course who are also in training teachers. The way the role is of the teacher has changed phenomenally. In fact, is what we need to also understand, that we are not only looked upon for our presence, we are also looked upon for what we deliver. And it is looking at that approach that we have to prepare ourselves not only adequately, but also appropriately. We also try to, through this session, try to also work on the digital competencies. Information is out there. On various occasions, we do not know. For example, our keynote speaker today will be discussing with us on the digital archiving. So how do we also encourage students to go beyond the textbook and to check online? And then how to filter down the information, how to check the credibility of the information which we have. All these aspects are also going to be part of our teaching and learning process in this 7-day program. And finally, we also want to develop a sense of confidence amongst the teachers, because when we go out and we present ourselves as the teachers of a particular subject, we need to also have the command on the subject. There are various theories which are outdated today, but we still teach them. There are various jargons which we do not know about, and we ignore them, we drop them. So are we ready to evolve? Are we ready to learn? And are we ready to grow is what we will be checking in this entire 7 days program. As YB Yeats had already quoted so nicely, he said, education is not the filling of a pot, but the lighting of a fire. And when we say lighting of a fire, if we do not have enough fire in us, I don't think so we'll be able to light the fire in the students. And the generation today, in fact, knows on various occasions much more, perhaps, than what we were at their age as such. So with all these inputs and the concept note, I once again welcome you all for the 7-day series. And we are once again thankful to University of Ottawa, Canada, especially Dr. Anne Vallely for endorsing the faculty development program, and also to St. Xavier's Institute of Education for being our collaborative partner and for encouraging us in all the possible ways. Over to you, Megha.
Thank you so much, sir, for introducing the Kaash Foundation to all the members and the viewers. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Sosama Samuel, the principal of St. Xavier's Institute of Education, Mumbai, for the welcome address. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Manager, St. Xavier's Institute of Education, Father Blaise D'Souza, Dr. Avakash Jadhav, founder, trustee, and director, Center for Academic and Professional Development, Kaash Foundation, Dr. Geeta Ajit, joint director and Center for Academic and Professional Development coordinator, Dr. Professor Anne Vallely, Program Director, Department of Classic and Religious Studies, University of Ottawa, Canada. Dr. Elvina Pereira, Assistant Professor and Program Coordinator from St. Xavier's Institute of Education, and the technical team, comparers, and participants. Good afternoon to everyone. I am pleased to welcome you to the second International Faculty Development Program conducted by Kaash Foundation's Center for Academic and Professional Development in collaboration with University of Ottawa, Canada, and St. Xavier's Institute of Education, Mumbai, a faculty development program for history teachers on pedagogy of teaching history from 3rd August to 9th August 2020. As we all know, aim of faculty development program is to enrich the knowledge of faculty members through interaction with eminent personalities and scholars from academics, and also to fill the educational gap of or professional gap and try to plug the gap effectively. A glance through the list of sessions for the next 7 days reveals that topics for faculty development program for history teachers is dealt through a modern lens to get a wide picture of history as a subject and broaden the perspectives on teaching of history for the tomorrow's students. Once Kareem Abdul Jabbar, the famous former professional basketball player, said, "If I had not become a professional basketball player, I would have become a history teacher." How he said this or why he said this, and what was the interest of a basketball player's second preference in life is to become a history teacher. That connection we are not aware of. But there is something in history he loved very much that made him to say so. Maybe I found the answer is anybody can make history, but only a great man can write it. Maybe this former basketball player intended to write history in his life. Friends, the traditional definition of history as the study of the past in the present for the future with the history teacher depends on various sources like material sources, written sources, etc. To teach history is past. There is a paradigm shift in this area, in this modern era. The method should help in the growth of the individual, and this paradigm shift is dealt through this faculty development program. The present faculty development program will address the following areas. How can we bring history into our life? How society can change and develop through teaching of history. How history provides identity to us. How history teaching can shape our behavior. How do we empower young minds through history teaching? What is the role of history teaching in bringing peace in today's world? What is the relevance of our past to inspire our students to make a difference in their life? History teaching should develop our imagination. It should help to open the mind of the learner, the importance of world culture. History can also hold lessons about science and technology and the world around us. Modern green architecture plans are often based on ancient layouts. We can't neglect ancient wisdom in modernization. Through the pedagogy of history teaching, we should be able to broaden the concept of humanity, knowledge of the past, ignite change, and sharing of collective memory regionally and globally. Let this faculty development program ignite our minds, shape our thoughts on what can be done for the society and the world. Let history pedagogy develop historical thinking, which is a unique capacity to comprehend human situations, challenges, the wonders of the past, and ability to make judgments about the present with a constant re-examination of past and present. The present FDP is a collaborative work of 3 organizations: Kaash Foundation, University of Ottawa, and St. Xavier's Institute of Education. Collaboration is always growth, improving efficiency, strengthening programs, and make use of compatible skills. This collaboration brings synergy. Working together collaboratively result in greater accomplishments, sharing of resources of all 3 organizations, and increase community awareness. I hope and wish that more such collaborative programs happen in future. Let St. Xavier's Institute of Education, Kaash Foundation, and University of Ottawa will work together for a common goal in the near future, which will help us to share individual strength and creativity of each institution. I take this opportunity to thank Dr. Kaash Jadhav, Founder, Trustee, and Director, Center of Academic and Professional Development, Kaash Foundation, Dr. Geeta Ajit, Joint Director, Kaash Foundation Coordinator, Anne Wally, Professor, Ottawa University, for arranging this international program with the best 13 resource scholars or resource persons to make the FDP more diversified and interesting, as what Sir said, to evolve as a best history teacher. Before I close, I would like to appreciate the effort of the program coordinator of St. Xavier's Institute of Education, my colleague, Dr. Elvina Pereira, and her team of history pedagogy students in organizing such a wonderful international faculty development program. I wish all participants a delightful and stimulating week ahead. Thank you very much.
Megha.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now I would like to invite Dr. Geeta Ajit, the Joint Director of CAPD of Kaash Foundation, to give the introduction of CAPD.
Thank you, Megha. Thank you so much. Once again, welcome to everybody, and to this second FDP that we have on pedagogy of teaching history. And I really like to thank Dr. Sosama Samuel for her warm words. And we are really looking forward to a lot more programs together, and we really hope to have many more. Dr. Kaash Jadhav has already spoken to you about Kaash Foundation, and he has just mentioned CAPD, and I'm here to elaborate what CAPD stands for and how this came in, how this whole idea came in. So this whole thing started on 25th of May, 2020. Kaash Foundation launched a separate wing to bridge the gap between the academic instructions and industry requirement. We've always had the whole industry and the whole world talking about the great divide that we have between the educational system and the industry requirements. And somehow, though there have been many attempts to bridge the gap, it has never really taken place in concrete modes. So we at Kaash Foundation, it was thought of that we should make a real strong attempt where we can bridge this. Because without this, our education system and the education that we give our students and children will really fall flat. So that's how this new wing CAPD came in. The CAPD, which stands for Center for Academic and Professional Development. this was once again conceptualized by Dr. Avkash Jadhav. It was his belief that we need to find novel ways to ensure that education and opportunities should be available to all those who seek it. The youth who are the future of our nation, they should be given a chance for a holistic development, which will enable them to overcome employment crisis, not only employment crisis, but also give them the confidence to face the challenges of the future. And especially with this pandemic raging going on, and we never seem to find the end to it, we need to give our youth more power. We need to empower them in even more. And what more but through education. Compartmentalization and exclusivity of subjects and knowledge is a thing of the past. Today, it is a time for academicians and professionals to approach every problem and barrier with a multidisciplinary approach. It is only when there is a commitment from the youth and the governing bodies to work together towards the benefit of a global society can we find true peace and harmony in this world. So keeping in tune with this philosophy, we at CAPD believe in the motto, time to renew, reinvent, and reinvigorate is now. What is the vision of CAPD? This is our vision. Our vision is to be a world-class institution by inspiring and initiating the youth towards becoming leaders in their organization, industry, which is also very important in the world today that we live in. We also have various missions. We have 4 missions. And our first mission is to provide programs and courses that lays a foundation to achieve academic and professional success. Second, to deliver increased quality and innovative modes in the areas of education, research, and professional courses. Third one, to lead the youth to work for the nation through self-reliance and empowerment. And fourth, to inculcate core values of love and respect towards the humanity and the environment around us. We believe that with these 4 points, we should be able to ensure a holistic development of every student, every youth, and every person who comes in contact with Kaash Foundation and CAPD. We also have objectives. We have 4 objectives. Our first objective is to provide opportunities for academic excellence to faculty and educational institutions through quality improvement programs, optimal delivery models, and creating avenues for possibility of collaborative research. Our second objective is to provide best practices to enhance teaching skills and professional development by conducting workshops, seminars, conferences, and FDP programs like the one we are having right now. Our third objective is to provide suggestions, recommendations, resources, and training programs to institutions and or organizations who wish to strengthen, upgrade, and increase their footfalls in the academic and international circles. Our fourth objective is to create opportunities for students by helping them to identify potentials and develop core skills by interact by participation and learn through foreign exchange programs. And this objective is even more important with the new education policy, which has been revamped, rechanged. And we hope that with this new education policy and with all the work that CAPD is doing under Kaash Foundation, we hope that students can identify their potentials. They can identify what they're really interested in. And once our core belief is when a student identifies their strength, they will definitely be successful. And this is where we hope to reach out to everybody out there. We also have a lot of benefits for those who become a member of CAPD. First of all, when you join, first of all, let me talk about what are the benefits you will have when you join CAPD. When you join CAPD, we also encouraging membership out for CAPD. And these are the benefits when you join CAPD as a member. You join a center where excellence is at the core of a system, and you garner a range of benefits to support you throughout your career. From skills to developing abilities and educational assistance, CAPD offers you extraordinary advantages which will benefit you at various stages in the advancement of your career. We make accomplishment a priority by providing access to top facilities and programs to help you to reach your optimal potential. And CAPD will give complete assistance and support to promote all activities undertaken and remains committed till the very end of the program. No matter what the program is, no matter what the activity we have taken up, no matter what is the whatever we have ensured, we promise to keep ensure that we promise to be there with you till the completion of it. What are the benefits of becoming a CAPD member? You earn special discounts in registration fees for workshops, seminars, conferences. You get exclusive invitations to events conducted by CAPD. And believe me, we have a lot in our store for all of you. Coming future, it's a new adventure that each person will take with us as they join us. Opportunities to participate in national, international seminars and conferences, to be a part of the resource pool for FDPs, workshops, etc., as per your expertise. Prospects of being a part of foreign exchange program, and a chance to be a part of the travel group for international programs. And of course, all this will be after the lockdown, but we have all this plans in store. And believe me, once a person, anybody becomes a member of CAPD, you will definitely not that you will not, you will, of course, you will not regret it, but you will be enjoying yourself to the optimum. And we have, just a minute. We have Dr. Sosama telling us, Dr. Sosama Samuel, hoping that we have many more FTPs and we have many more programs. Let me tell you, we have one more planned already on the annual for us. We have in English, which the topic is Modern Approaches to English Language Teaching. Father was earlier talking about how at the grassroots level, at the rural areas, we still need to reach out in many ways. They still are not able to enjoy the kind of comforts enjoyed by the urban community. So I feel this new paradigm of teaching learning, which is through online resources, through the internet, instead of thinking of it as a barrier, as something, an obstacle, this is something we can turn into an opportunity, where probably with this mode, we can reach out to every person in every part of the country, no matter how remote. And I'm sure today we have internet resources almost everywhere. The Prime Minister and the government is doing their best. So once they have the internet, we can do it through these teaching methodologies and these new online programs that we have with us. So we are definitely looking forward to having more participation, not just in this and even in the further ones that we come in, especially in the modern approaches to English language and teaching, which we plan to hold somewhere in the last week of August. And English being the global language today, if we can empower almost every person to speak and communicate with efficacy, with efficiency, with proficiency, I'm sure the confidence level will also increase. And they will be able to compete on par with anybody on global level. And that is what we hope for in CAPD. Okay? So once again, I would like to thank our collaborators for being with us and for this inaugural session of the FDP in history today. And I welcome you all and thank you for being a part of this program. Over to you, Megha.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now, this is to inform to all the viewers and our members that all the registered participants are requested to fill in the feedback form as attendance and to document your learning for the day. Now, I would like to invite Professor Elvina Pereira, the Assistant Professor of St. Xavier's Institute of Education, Mumbai, for the guidelines of the today's session.
Good evening, Father Blaise D'Souza, Managing Trustee, St. Xavier's Institute of Education, Dr. Kaash Jadhav, Founder, Trustee, Kaash Foundation, Director, Center for Academic and Professional Development, Dr. Sosamma Samuel, Principal and Program Coordinator, St. Xavier's Institute of Education, Dr. Geeta Ajit, Joint Director and Program Coordinator, Kaash Foundation Center for Academic and Professional Development. Once again, good evening to each and everyone. Good evening to my colleagues from St. Xavier's Institute of Education, teacher educators, those who are doing this faculty development program, student teachers from different colleges of education. A warm welcome to each one of you for this second International FDP Faculty Development Program on the theme Pedagogy of Teaching History. I would like to begin with a quote by founder of critical pedagogy, Henry Gerox, who says, "Pedagogy is not about training, it is about critically educating people to be self-reflective, capable of critically address their relationship with others and with the larger world. Pedagogy in this sense provides not only important critical and intellectual competencies, it also enables people to intervene critically in the world." And I sincerely think whatever so far Father Blaise, Professor Kaash Jadhav, Dr. Sosamma Samuel, and Dr. Geeta Ajit, whatever they have spoken, this is just the gist of what they have spoken. For me, as a teacher or teacher educator of history, many a times we are confronted with the question, why do we have to learn history? I'm sure school teachers also are confronted with the same question, why do we have to learn history? And when you reflect why history as a subject at all levels of education always faces the threat of not being able to create its status as an important subject. The reason could be many for the waning interest of students in history, like perception of parents. It could be many things, perception of teachers, the way we are using different methodologies, the way we are using different approaches to teach history, and it could go on and on and on. I'm sure as history teachers, when we reflect, and as we reflect, we realize history as a subject provides benefits to every profession on the globe and impacts every aspect of our life through its understanding, comprehending, and applying of historical principles. Not to forget, history has given us millions of brilliant ideas. History has helped us understand trends about ourselves. It has given us inspiration and motivation. And with past generation, we have empathized because of history. And finally, above all, it reminds us that we are human beings. The benefits of learning history are countless. Today, we need to look at the way we teach history, because no longer can we teach history with facts and read boring passages, especially when we are shaping the young learners who will soon lead the change in the world. Today, as we try to adapt to new normal, we need to think about use of appropriate, interesting, and meaningful approaches, methods, and strategies of teaching history. To transmit historical information by engaging the students in a critical and analytical mindset, which surely will help in regaining the elegance of teaching history and create an effective reputation among the students, parents, and society at large. It's my wish and dream as a teacher educator, since I see so many future teachers, student teachers are part of this second international faculty development program on pedagogy of teaching history. I'm hopeful that this faculty development program will surely energize all of us to make the journey of teaching history very enriching. Wishing all the participants for this FDP program very insightful and motivating experience throughout this FD program. Once again, I thank Professor Anne Vallely, in Program Director, Department of Classic and Religious Studies, University of Ottawa, Canada. Dr. Kaash Jadhav, Founder Trustee, Kaash Foundation, Director, Center for Academic and Professional Development. Dr. Susamma Samuel, Principal and Program Director, St. Xavier's Institute of Education. Father Blaise D'Souza, SJ, Managing Trustee, St. Xavier's Institute of Education. Dr. Geeta Ajit, Joint Director and Program Coordinator, Kaash Foundation Center for Academic and Professional Development. We now proceed to understand some of the guidelines of the faculty development program, just to make the participants understand about various guidelines. We will now see a PowerPoint presentation through which I'll be explaining to you all the guidelines for the course. Okay, I hope all of you are able to see the screen.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Now, these are the FDP guidelines for the 7th day of our program. And the first one says the participants are expected to be present for all the sessions of the 7-day International Faculty Development Program. Now, kindly note, you may be present for the sessions every day, but if you do not fill the feedback for the sessions every day, filling feedback is a must to mark your attendance. So there will be feedback link provided every day, and we request all the participants to fill the feedback form provided daily, so that your daily attendance is marked and there is no issues or hassles at the end of the program. So attending is one part of the guideline, and secondly, filling up the feedback form to mark your attendance for the day is mandatory. We are also giving you an overall feedback link, which will be given to you at the on the last day of the program, that is 9th August. So that also is a mandatory thing for all the participants to fill and submit to avail your final e-certificate. So kindly note, there are 3 things which you need to take care of: attending session every day, filling feedback form every day after the session is over, and giving your overall feedback at the end of the faculty development program. All 3 will qualify you and this is regarded as your attendance, and this will qualify you to get the e-certificate of the FDP. We are also going to grade all the participants. The overall grade will be decided on the following criteria. Criteria 1, as I said, attendance in all the sessions. You get 40 marks out of 100 for attending all the sessions. You get 30 marks, which is criteria 2, for the submission of feedback for the sessions. So that you do on daily basis. So again, we are repeating, there will not be any hassle if you do this on daily basis. Everything goes very smoothly. Third thing, submission of the overall feedback. Now, there is some kind of, in the feedback form, you will come across that there is a limit of certain words, certain count. Please see to it that you follow that when you are writing the report. Just do not write and send. Please see that certain amount of words which are expected are written by you, so that the entire process of getting the certificate becomes very smooth. So please see to it that all the participants will be very clear about this particular guidelines. Okay. These are the guidelines which are there for all the participants throughout this entire faculty development program, which will get over basically on 9th of August. Avkash sir, would you like to add something? Geeta ma'am? Dr. Geeta?
I think you have, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. Elvina ma'am, you have explained everything so well, so clearly. I think there's nothing much more to add. And yes, it's going to be very interesting, and really, I'm sure everyone is really looking forward to it. It's really, you have explained, we have been very clear. So almost everything is.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now we invite Dr. Kamini Gogri, our Kaash Foundation core committee member, to say a few words on the theme of the FDP. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Megha. Dear friends, for me personally, history is a very, very passionate subject. Now, when I say passionate subject, what is it exactly am I looking at in history? Now, generally, when we try to understand history, we say we want to study the events of the past. Now, what is it what we want to know? Are we studying only the events, or we are interested to interpret the events? It is something which is not in our hands. So what is it in our hands? We have certain material factors. We have certain text. We have certain oral traditions, certain stories. We have songs. We have imagination. We have all sorts of things. We have nature. Now, what is that? What we are exactly looking at? Now, if I talk and I share my experience, my passion is ancient Indian history. Now, why ancient Indian history? Because I'm interested to study something what is mysterious at a distance past. Because what is today is something which has been a reflection of our past. Our present is not in isolation, neither our future will be. So, what is it what we are looking? When I look at our present, the structures are held on our past. Say, for example, when we are studying certain dynasties, we are studying certain events Now, we are not only studying a dynasty, we are not only studying events. It is an integrated approach. Now, what is that integrated approach? A particular ruler has ruled. Now, when a ruler has ruled in that era, what is the mindset of the ruler? Why he has ruled like that? What is it that he had a vision of his kingdom as? He has emerged as a leader. Now, history is about leadership. Now, what are the leadership qualities? Now, he studied that. You know, my niece, who was 13-year-old, who is 13-year-old, she always asked me, now, if Shivaji has killed Aurangzeb, how does it matter to me? Now, this is a big question mark. The question mark is, how are we interested to teach history to young minds? Now, Shivaji is not an ordinary ruler. He had a vision to create a society on certain foundations. What are those foundations on which an structure emerges? A visionary. Now, what does a visionary have? To build up a society, a welfare state. What is a welfare state? Economics, morality, or even if you say environment, you say foreign policies, you say politics, allies, friendship, finances, everything which comes when we talk about a particular historical consciousness. How are we interpreting? How are we understanding that distant past which has led to a certain historic building a certain narratives? So we are talking about facts on one hand, and we are talking about building those narratives on another end. How are these narratives built? Why are those dynasties? Why are certain events helpful to us today? Now, say for another thing which I would like to share is, now when we say the Eastern traditions and the Western traditions, the foundations are separate. Now, what are those foundations? Say, for example, in Eastern traditions, if you take India, China, Japan, and some other countries, they are built on certain a concept which has, say, for example, a cyclical concept of time. Now, in a cyclical concept of time, we have always looked at nature. Now, what is it that nature wants to tell us? How have the ancient people, when science has not developed the way it has developed today, how the answers, the inquiry mind was set up? So history develops an inquiry mindset. Therefore, in that inquiry mindset, we have an imagination plays a very big role. Now, we in India or in these Eastern traditions, we have, say, we talks about host of same entities which we do not see. And to make it simply, we talk about gods, goddesses, such entities which we do not see. When we do not see these entities, now what happens to us? So we try to build up imaginations. We say that these entities were instrumental in building up a society and the human and non-human interventions. But when the scientific mindset develops, we ask for proofs. What are the proofs? Material culture, literal sources, oral tradition. When we go to the Western tradition or the Abrahamic tradition, they have a linear concept of time. In the linear concept of time, there is no reversal. There only is one way. So that is a different world view. Now, in the different world view, the foundations are different. When the foundations are different, we have these, we look at these two polarities, the ancient tradition and maybe a certain modern traditions, and in that we have a scientific mindset. When the scientific mindset enters, we ask for proofs, but at every level proofs have a limitations. So therefore historical consciousness is interpreting those events, those proofs with our imagination. Of course, there are various theories of interpretations, but again, now the time has come to relook, to reimagine new interpretations itself. Where do we bridge the gap between science, between history, historical consciousness, and we talk about the Indian tradition, we talk about the Aitya Purana traditions. Now, can we really throw away with that? No, we cannot. because the ancient past has a more ancient past, a more ancient past. As human beings, we always feel privilege. But I think the corona crisis has shown the place of a human being. Therefore, the need not only to look at human beings, but even the non-human, that is animal consciousness, environmental consciousness on whole, in totality. And that's how you might find some answers to look at history in a more powerful way, because history is about a vision, a visionary leaders. And when Kaash Foundation aims at to building up leaders, the leadership is about justice. Leadership is about ethics and morality. Leadership is about building a welfare society. And when Chanakya talks about leadership, he talks about a just leader. How the mighty Mauryan Empire was built on just leadership, and how the very first Indian empire creates, evolves. The kingdoms were evolved, and in that evolution, we have this first empire which unites what we call Bharat, we call Hindustan, we call India. In spite of differences, how this empire created a foundations on very instrumental, dynamic foreign policies, building up allies, building up treasury, and the basis is what a king should know, what a leader should know. So leader should not only should know about ethics and finances, but also good foreign policies, good allies, to know, have built up very diplomatic relationships. So history encompasses all of it. Not only that, and in that, a leader balances two polarities, to embrace two polarities, and to build a dynamic foundations. That is history and historical consciousness. It is because today a past is in front of us and future is behind us, and we are in the presence. How in this today's single movement we are able to live that, visualize that, taking examples from the future and the past, not to commit the same mistakes, but to overcome those mistakes and build a better future. I think I have to say, I have said whatever I have to say, and I would, I really would stop here without taking much of the time. And thank you, Dr. Avkash Jadhav and Kaash Foundation for this opportunity. And I really wish a very, very well, success for this endeavor, and especially the students and faculty, that history is interesting. It is interesting because we have to make it interesting. We become one with the subject, and we become one with the subject, we live the subject, and that's how we make it interesting, be it through song, be it through dance, be it through any subject of creativity. History is about all of it. It's about arts, it's about craft, and craft is about creativity, and history is creativity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We would like to thank our collaborative partner, University of Ottawa, Canada, St. Xavier's of Institute of Education, for collaborating with Kaash Foundation Center of Academic and Professional Development. We would like to thank Father Blaise D'Souza for our inaugural address. We would like to thank Dr. Afkar Jadhav for the introduction of Kaash Foundation and concept note, Dr. Sosama Samuel for the welcome address, Dr. Geeta Ajit for the introduction of CAPD, Professor Elvina Pereira for the guidelines of the session. Now, we would like to move on to the first speaker of the FDP program. Now, I would like to invite Professor Elvina Pereira to kindly moderate the session and introduce our keynote speaker for the first day of our faculty development program. Over to you, ma'am.
Good evening, and once again, a warm welcome to each one
Ma'am, I
of
would
you.
request you to just keep your video on.
Okay. Good evening and a warm welcome once again to each one of you for the second International Faculty Development Program in collaboration with Kaash Foundation Center for Academic and Professional Development, Mumbai, Department of Classic and Religious Studies, University of Ottawa, Canada, and St. Xavier's Institute of Education, Mumbai. It's my proud privilege to introduce Dr. James Onley as a keynote speaker for the inaugural function of the second International Faculty Development Program on the theme Pedagogy of Teaching History. Dr. James Onley is the Director of Historical Research and Partnership at the Qatar National Library in Doha, Qatar. Sir specializes in Gulf history, heritage, culture, society, and politics from 16th century to 21st centuries. Gulf region's connections with Asia, South Asia from 16th century to 21st century. Indian Ocean history, once again from 16th to 20th centuries. Indian diasporas and the British Empire in the Middle East and India. Sir holds a DPhil in modern history from St. Anthony's College, University of Exeter. He was the editor of Britain and the World Book Series from 2010 to 2015 and has been the editor of the Journal of Arabian Studies since 2010. In 2007, Sir published a book titled The Arabian Frontier of the British Raj, Merchants, Rulers, and the British in the 19th Century Gulf, which was published by Oxford University Press. Sir has also published articles and chapters in various national and international journals and books, including The Emergence of the Gulf States, Studies in Modern History, Journal of Arabian Studies, and the Persian Gulf in Modern Times, Ports, People, and History. Since 2017, Sir is the co-author of and lead researcher in Phase 3 of the British Library Qatar Foundation Partnership, which aims in continuing the process of digitizing Gulf-related records in the British Library, first conducted in Phase 1 and Phase 2. Sir has also been a member of several boards and committees, including the Association of Gulf and Arabian Peninsula Studies, the British Scholar Society, the Gulf Studies Center at Qatar University, and the Institute of Arabic and Islamic Studies at the University of Exeter. As I was going through about Sir's information, I happened to see another very interesting part of Sir's personality is that before joining as academia, Sir served in the Canadian Army for 12 years and was a UN peacekeeper in Iraq at the end of the Iran-Iraq War. Traditionally, in the teaching of history, archives are considered as effective tool in giving the students high level of thinking skills. In digital era, digital archives provide access to materials that only researchers, scholars, and librarians had access to. As we know, teaching of history is closely related to learning based on documents, whether it is development of cause and effect relation or development of chronological understanding. For that matter, development of self-development and development of empathy. In modern era, digital archives are imperative in teaching of history because it gives free and ready access to millions of digitized primary sources. Today, Professor James Onley will enlighten us on the topic using digital archives in the classroom, the case of the Qatar Digital Library. Once again, I welcome you, sir, for the second International Faculty Development Program on the theme Pedagogy of Teaching History and I request you sincerely to deliver the keynote address at the inaugural function of the second International Faculty Development Program. Over to you, sir.
Hello, and thank you very much for inviting me to participate in your impressive event. And I'm looking forward to the questions at the end. I'm going to share my screen now and give you a PowerPoint slide presentation throughout my talk. Oh, hello, I'm back. Can you see me or hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you and see you.
Okay, sorry about that. I had to
no problem, sir. You may
log
carry
out and
on.
log back again to activate the share screen function. I didn't realize that was a necessity. Well, thank you for joining today. Today, I'll be speaking about using digital archives in the classroom, the case of the Gutter Digital Library. I'll be talking about three things. First of all, some background about digital archives. What are they? How they're created, their benefits and disadvantages. And then I'm going to give you a case study of the Gutter Digital Library, explaining what it is, what's in it, and some search techniques. And then finally, I'm going to look at using digital archives in the classroom, touching on the skills that you can develop in doing this, the lessons that you can teach, approaches you can take, and some possible assignments you can use in class. But first, I thought I'd explain a little bit about myself to help you understand where I'm coming from. So I'm a traditional historian. I have a doctorate in history and was a university professor until about 3 years ago, when I was asked to become the founding director of historical research at the Gutter National Library. And my job is to identify archival collections on the Gulf and West Asia in general in archives around the world, to negotiate digitization agreements with those archives, and then to have them digitized and then placed on the Gutter Digital Library, where they can be accessed by anyone, anywhere in the world. Now, the reason why I became involved in this was years before I became very interested in scoping archives and identifying material on West Asia in archives. It turns out that archives are not very well cataloged, and often the archivists working in them are unaware of what they have for your specific area. So this became an interest of mine, and as a result, I was involved in a number of research projects to catalog the West Asian records in the Maharashtra State Archive in Mumbai and the National Archives of India in New Delhi. There's about 100,000 records there on West Asia. And it was in this context that I was then invited to join the project team on the Gutter Digital Library. Okay, so first of all, what are digital archives? I thought the easiest way to explain to everybody what they are is to show you a terminology table comparing a physical archive with a digital archive, because often people are unaware of what's under the hood of a digital archive. So on the left, we have the archival building, but in the digital world, we don't have a building, but a server, which is where the information, the data is stored. In the physical world, we have an archival collection within the archive, but in the digital world, we call that a database. In the physical world, we have a reading room where you go to access the material. But in the digital world, we have a user interface, which is usually a website. In the physical world, we have a reader's desk, but in the digital world, it's your computer. That's what you need. Plus, of course, an internet connection. In the physical world, we have request procedures where you go to a desk, you fill in a form to request the documents that you want. But in the digital world, all of your requests are handled by a software program to deliver up what you're looking for. In the physical world, we have an item. The individual thing you're ordering, the file, is in the digital world is called a digital object. Now that could be anything from a photograph to a sound recording to a page in a digitized document. In the physical world, we have a reference number that you have to write down on your request form, just the same with books. But in the digital world, we call that a unique identifier. And often it's not just simply the reference number of the record. Let's say it's a photograph from an archive that you're looking for. In addition, in the digital world, we assign it a unique identifier, which is longer and is often part of the URL. In the physical world, we have a catalog entry when you go to the catalog, usually a large printed volume in the archive, and you're looking for a particular file, let's say, you'll go through that catalog and you'll find the catalog entry of the file you're looking for. That will be a description. But in the digital world, we call that metadata. In the physical world, what governs what you put in a catalog, the date, who created it, a description of it, the reference number, all of these things. In the digital world, we call that metadata schema or metadata standards. So let's go on to what are, rather from to the next topic of how are digital archives created. So it begins when the owner of a physical archive or a collection and the copyright holder, and they may not necessarily be the same, agree to digitize the collection and place it online. For example, an archive might hold the records of a particular ministry, like the foreign ministry, but the copyright is actually held by the government, not by the archive, you see. So the government would have to grant permission for this material to be digitized and placed online. Now, once the project begins, it starts by with a team of catalogers writing the metadata, which is the catalog entries for the files that are about to be digitized. And this is time-consuming work. It's actually 90% of the effort and time in an archival digitization project. Now, here's an example of some metadata from the Gutter Digital Library. As you can see, this is a catalog entry, but if you scroll down, it contains a lot of information, a tremendous amount of information so you can understand the full provenance of this particular record. Once the catalog material has been written, then the files themselves, as you can see at the top, are digitized. They're usually digitized by being photographed from above or scanned from above using what we call an overhead scanner. Here's an example from our partnership team at the British Library, scanning documents for the Gutter Digital Library. Once the files have been digitized, the files and the metadata are then parceled together and put into a database, which is a collection of files. Then that database, which is the collection that you've digitized with the metadata, is placed on a server, usually a cloud-based server, rather than a server at the actual archive. I'll talk more about that a bit later. Once the material is on a server, then you create an interface, a user interface, usually a website, from which the database can be accessed and the files can be downloaded. So what are the benefits of digital archives compared to traditional physical archives? Well, the number one benefit is the search function. You can find a lot more on a digital archive than using a conventional archival catalog. So if you recall the catalog example, you go into the archive, you pull out that large volume and you go through it page by page. It might have a good index or not, might have a good table of contents or not. And it's very laborious. You have to read through a lot. It takes a long time. But with a digital archive, you just search, like Google, in the search field, you can type your keywords and presto, you've got your search results. Another benefit is the time. It takes just seconds to get results as opposed to hours, days, or weeks working in the physical archive. For example, using the Gutter Digital Library, you can access this material from your own home within seconds. Whereas if you were to go to the British Library and see the physical records, that would take you weeks or months of planning. You'd have to book flights, you'd have to book hotels, you'd have to then, the time it takes to go there, you'd have to fill in a request form for a reader's pass, you'd have to get to the reading room, you would have to fill in the request forms, and you would slowly go through all of the different files. And of course, all of this would take an immense amount of money and time. It would take possibly weeks, often months. But with the Gutter Digital Library, you can do all that in seconds. Another benefit of digital archives is that you can just download everything, usually, instead of copying. Copying can be very expensive within archives, and it can take a long time. I remember when I was working in the National Archives of India, it took months for my simple photocopy requests to be filled. Whereas with the Gutter Digital Library and other digital libraries, you can just simply download what you want when you want it. Another benefit is that they're usually free, not always. Sometimes they're behind a paywall. So JSTOR is a good example of that. But if your institution subscribes to JSTOR, then it's free. And of course, like I said, no travel costs. All of this means that digital archives are changing the way historians research the past. But of course, there are disadvantages to using digital archives. So the biggest disadvantage is information overload. You get too many hits. Again, just like Google, you will get thousands of hits. How do you find what you're looking for when you've been overwhelmed with information? This is why search techniques are so important. You really need to refine and enhance your search techniques. A lot of people don't appreciate how important they are. And the search techniques that I'm talking about for digital archives, I mean, they're applicable for Google as well. Another disadvantage is that the digital archives usually only hold a tiny fraction of an archive's collection. And therefore, the files you're looking at are not seen in their full context. You're just seeing snippets. Another disadvantage is that the digital archives are only as good as their metadata. Some digital archives have very, very basic metadata. So when you're searching, there might not, for example, be keywords assigned to the documents that would tell you what's in them. And if the documents are not OCR'd, that is optical character recognition, whereby you can search the words within the document, then you'll have to go through each document manually as you would in a physical archive. The Gutter Digital Library has very rich metadata, as the example showed, the example I gave you showed. And so that enhances the search function. Other restrictions are not allowing download. This is unfortunate. Some archives prefer you only to view the material online. An example is the National Archives of India, which has a new digital archive, but it doesn't allow you to download. And the functionality of their digital archive is rather restricted. It's very slow and cumbersome. So the digital archives vary in quality, and also that's a reflection of the resources available to the archive or to its larger foundation that it belongs to. So, for example, wealthy universities that have library collections, those will be very, very good. A good example of this might be the Stanford Library and Archival Collection. Absolutely cutting edge when it comes to digital archives. You should take a look at it. And then there are other ones which are done on a shoestring. Oh, and one more point, of course, is the internet speed. Very important. Since the files are usually large, you need a fast internet speed to get the full benefits of the digital archive. Okay, now I'll talk a bit about the Qatar Digital Library. What is it? This is the interface, the landing page. When you type it in, it's at qdl.qa. You can just Google Qatar Digital Library. It was founded by the Qatar Foundation, of which the Qatar National Library, where I work, forms a part, and it's run by the Qatar National Library. My department, the Department of Historical Research, is responsible for finding the content that you see on the Qatar Digital Library, but I work with a cross-disciplinary team that specializes in a whole range of necessary skills, from metadata and cataloging to digitization, to copyright law. The Qatar Digital Library was launched in October 2014 in partnership with the British Library, but now we're moving to work with other archives as well to digitize their material. It's fully bilingual in both English and in Arabic. So if you look at the top right hand, you'll see Arabic there, Al-Arabi. You just click on that and the whole interface will switch to Arabic. It hosts archival records on West Asia, mainly the Gulf, and medieval Arabic manuscripts on science. It's the world's largest digital archive on the Middle East. Here's an example of the interface when you're looking at, once you go past the landing page and you go to the search page. This is what it looks like. You just type in the general search field what you're looking for. Here's an example of the Arabic landing page and the Arabic search page. Okay, so what's in the Qatar Digital Library? Well, as I've mentioned, we have a lot of material from the British Library, which is mainly the East India Company records and the India Office records in London, in the British House of the British Library, as well as the Qatar National Library's own collection on West Asia. It also houses what you see here, or will in future, which is material on the photographs, or archival blueprints, and so on, of the traditional architecture and built environment and urban geography of the Gulf Cooperation Council states. This is known as the Gulf Architecture Project, a project in partnership with the School of Architecture at Liverpool University in the UK, which is the oldest architecture school in the UK. Here's Liverpool's own project landing page. Also in future, we will be placing the Ottoman State Archive records on the Gulf region on the Qatar Digital Library. These are in Ottoman Turkish, as well as the Dutch East India Company records on West Asia, which are in the National Archive of the Netherlands. Also, the French National Library, the BNF, we're presently digitizing a collection of Arabic manuscripts, which we'll put on the QDL next year. Also, the French Diplomatic Archives, which have a lot of material on West Asia, going back to the 1700s. And we're currently awaiting approval from the Ministry of External Affairs in New Delhi to digitize the records on West Asia in the Maharashtra State Archives in Mumbai, which is probably one of the most beautiful archival buildings in the world, beautiful Gothic revival architecture. Okay, so now I'd like to talk a bit about some search techniques on the Gutter Digital Library. Now, I'll just simply point out these things to you because I'm sharing screen using my PowerPoint. I don't want to switch over just yet to sharing screen for my web browser. Now, if you take a look at the Gutter Digital Library, you will see a number of features there which help you refine your search. So when you type in the search field your general search term, you can use some typical techniques we use in Google. One is you can put the phrase that you're looking for in quotation marks, and that particular phrase will be searched for. If you don't use that phrase, it will find every document with either of those words if you have two, or if you have three words, it'll find documents with all of those three words. The default is and. So if you have, for example, India, Gulf, Hindu, it will find all documents with all three words. But if you put that in quotations, it will only look for that particular phrase. Once you've got your search results, then you can use filters to refine your search. Now, Google also has filters. You just have to look for them. One of the filters is well, the obvious ones are on the left here. So you can see, you can filter by archival type. You want to look, for example, for map or photograph. You can narrow your search down very quickly so that you will only see maps or you only see photographs. Further down, you can filter by place. So you only want files on Kuwait, for example. And then further down again, there's language. So if you're looking for, let's see, documents that are in, let's say, Gujarati, you can do that on the Gutter Digital Library. There's a filter that will allow you to search by dozens of different languages. Now, we don't have an equal number, obviously, of files in all languages there. But if you are looking just for material on a particular language like Gujarati or Sindhi or whatnot, or Marathi, you can do that on the Gutter Digital Library. Finally, you can search by subject. Further down below, you can't see it, is a range of chosen subjects, politics, economy, religion, things like this. So you can narrow it down again. All of these filters are keyed to or tied to the metadata. So when the catalog team was creating the archival records, the catalog records for each file, they were putting in certain fields the keywords that would allow you to search by filter. So in the language box, it'll say all the languages that appear in this particular file. Finally, at the top, you'll see it says show timeline. Google has the same feature. You can narrow your search to a particular time period. So let's say you're only looking for documents from 1900. The time bar will allow you to do that. It will also show you a graph to show how many hits you have by a year. So you may discover that there are more hits in a given year than other years, and that will help you identify within the metadata how common a term is used. So let's say you're looking for the presence of a person who would, let's say a merchant from India who went to the Gulf on and off to conduct business. If you search for their name in quotation marks and then you use the time bar, you'll be able to see all the times they appear within the records across this time bar, this chronology. That will allow you to very quickly map that person's activities when they're referred to and presumably when they went on their business trips to the Gulf. Now, finally, I'd like to end with giving you some ideas about using digital archives in the classroom. I've done this myself as an historian. It's not straightforward. You really need to think about it, what you want to get out of it. And you really need to pre-plan your classroom exercises and homework exercises. There are many, many different approaches. The ones I'm giving you here are just some of the ones that I used, but there's a lot on the internet for you to discover. There's books, there's articles, there's forums, there are lesson plans that you can draw upon. to inform your lesson when you're drawing up your lesson plan before your class. Oops, sorry, I don't have any more slides. So let me start by talking about the skills that you can develop when using digital archives in the classroom. The skill set that you're developing amongst your students applies not just to history, but to many other professions as well. Whether your students go on to become historians or managers or management consultants, you name it. The skills that you're teaching them in using digital archives will be applicable for their future careers. So these skills, and these are just a set, some of the most obvious ones are data literacy, learning how to deal with data and the abundance of data and how to interpret data. That's very important. Another is search techniques, like I mentioned. This applies to everything. Even if you're looking for the cheapest flights to a destination, you need to have search skills, search techniques to refine your search. Another is critical thinking, because the information is presented to you undigested, in a large mass. So you have to teach your students how to deal with that and how to distinguish the relevant from the irrelevant. So critical thinking is an important skill. Problem solving is another to it is pattern spotting. So of course, historical research, archival research is similar to any other form of investigation. It's often compared to detectives like Sherlock Holmes. When I was doing my PhD at Oxford, I was reading some of the best short stories that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle had compiled of Sherlock Holmes' adventures. And his problem-solving process and techniques, I found that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle used in these stories really informed my own approach to the archives and in trying to solve puzzles. Because, of course, the archival material is always fragmentary. You don't have full evidence, so you have to connect the dots. And then finally, the skill that you're developing is the construction of hypotheses, of arguments that make sense of these patterns that you see, and then draw conclusions from those patterns. Another thing that you need to be very clear about when constructing your lesson plan are the lessons you want your students to learn. And some of the obvious lessons are, what is historical evidence? I mean, it could be, of course, anything, but how do you use that? So you need to get your students to thinking outside of the box, much like a detective when they're looking at things. Often even the absence of evidence is evidence itself. The best example of this is the story of the dog that did not bark in one of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's stories about Sherlock Holmes when he was down in Dartmoor. And of course, that was the evidence, is that the murder occurred at an isolated farm, but the person who lived there, their dog did not bark at the intruder. And Sherlock Holmes took this as evidence that the dog knew the intruder and therefore didn't bark. So what is historical evidence? Another is why historical evidence is fragmentary and biased in nature. Archives are always assembled for a purpose. In the case of the East India Company and the India Office records in the house in the British Library, that purpose was the colonial rule and domination of India. So these are not impartial, objective archives. Nonetheless, once you get past the bias and of course the purpose that the archive was constructed or assembled, the archival collection was assembled for, the material can still be of immense value. You just have to know how to handle it carefully. It's the same with police officers who are interviewing witnesses. Of course, the witnesses will give a biased account, but it's still important information. Another lesson, of course, is why archival collections exist, who chose to assemble them, and for what purpose. That's really important. We shouldn't accept archival collections at face value. And often the people who are writing the reports that we're reading in the archives themselves will have motivations. Sometimes it's just simply to make themselves look good in the report. It's not necessarily always the case that the material can be taken at face value. You need to always cross-reference it with other forms of historical evidence, much like the analogy I give to my students is in Map and Compass, where if you're trying to find out where you are on the map, you use a process called triangulation, where you take at least 3 different reference points in 3 different directions, and you draw a line on your map using the bearing from each of those, and then you are in the middle of the triangle that results on the map. And it's the same with historical research. You can't rely on one source alone. You have to rely on many, and of course from different perspectives. Finally, how does one interpret historical evidence? How can we deconstruct for example, a letter or photograph to fully understand it? So these are very important lessons, and of course you can give examples in the classroom. Next, a little bit about the approach one can take. Now, the problem with digital archives is the abundance of information, and your students will suffer from information overload if you're not careful. So I recommend the targeted and guided use of digital archives. Just give them one or a handful of selected documents or items, photographs, sound recordings to work with. You also need to give your students a very clear set of deliverables to work towards. They have to understand what the end goal is and what that looks like. And you can give them an example in the classroom. And so finally, I recommend you take an approach that I call I do, we do, you do, which is first you teach, you show them the example, you show them how to interpret a document, how to find it, how to interpret it, how to deconstruct it, how to draw out of it all of its various things, the significance of it, and so on. Then you break the students into small teams, and they do classwork together, and they work on a problem. And then you assign homework. Then they go away, and then they do the assignment, which they bring back after a week or so. Now, there's an unlimited number of possible assignments that you could draw up. But let me give you some examples. One, and this is the way I usually approach it, is that I would assign a reading or teach a class about a particular historical event, issue, or person that I know there is material for on, in this case, the Gutter Digital Library. So then I foreground the exercise with giving them the historical background to this event, issue, or person. Then I look at some of the archival sources relating to that event, issue, or person. And I'll start by, for example, giving a photograph or document. I'll put it on screen for the class to see. And then I will commence to deconstruct it. I'll ask questions to the class. I'll say, what can you see in this photograph? Who's in this photo? Who do you think this person is? Who's that person? Can you tell? And then how are they dressed? How are they positioned? Can you get anything out of the positioning of the people, the power dynamics? Who do you think took the photograph? When do you think the photograph was taken? Where do you think it was taken? What was the purpose of the photograph? Why was it taken in the first place, and for what reason? These sorts of things. So once you spend some time working with the class, deconstructing a bit of historical evidence on the digital library, or the digital archive that you're working for, then you can assign, break the class into small groups of 2 or 3 people, and you give each group a different document to deconstruct and analyze. And you ask them to answer a key set of questions that you've set out there, like the provenance of the document, why and when it was created, and for that sort of thing. And then what does it tell us about this issue or event or person? How much information can they get out of it? Realizing, of course, that one document is only viewing the issue out of context, but still have them go through that exercise. And then after about 5 or 10 minutes of them taking notes, then you can ask each group in turn to put their document on screen for the class to see. And then they can give a short presentation of 3 to 5 minutes about what they found about that particular document. right? So after they presented, then you can maybe open it up to the class and say, right, what do you think? And others might say, well, no, I think it tells us something else, or you missed something here. And once you go through that with the entire class, then you can assign the homework. And the homework, again, has to be very targeted. You can give them a key set of questions, but you could let them find their own document this time on the digital archive. But you need to have clear marking criteria and the expectations, and like I said, a clear set of deliverables of what the students are to submit at the end of the assignment. So this is, I think, a very high-level overview of digital archives and how we can use them in the classroom, and showing you an example of the Gutter Digital Library. That concludes my talk. Thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to your questions.
Good evening, sir. Can we take few questions, sir?
Yes, I'd be
Yes.
happy to
Okay.
answer any questions.
Okay. So the first question is, how do you document intangible heritage when it comes to digital archives? How
Good
do
question.
you document? Yeah.
Right. So intangible heritage is anything that, of course, isn't physical. And the answer, of course, is through filming and interviews. So now these collections can exist because they've been assembled by somebody else. For example, tape cassettes or video that's been filmed. And then what you need to do is then, of course, digitize that. But these things present challenges, because when you're documenting intangible heritage, for example, the recording of a song or the interview with somebody, copyright law and data protection comes into play. You need the permission of the people who are speaking or singing or being interviewed to place that video or that sound recording online. So what happens then if you don't know how to get in touch with that person? So these are real challenges. So although the digital age seems very promising, that a lot of material can be placed online and can be accessible to everybody, there are immense legal hurdles that one must get through. So if you are a member of a university, your university will have something called, or your college within the university will have something called an institutional review board or an ethics committee. And this committee will have guidelines about how you can tackle these hurdles. The easiest way to tackle them, of course, is to conduct the interviews and do the filming yourself, because then you can, before you conduct filming, ask the participants to fill in these consent forms to allow them to place it online. Then once the intangible material is online, you sometimes have to interpret it for people to draw out the significance of it. So this is where the metadata is extremely important. And if you have a collection, you would want to have a description that accompanies the collection as a whole that explains the significance of it, because usually these things don't speak for themselves. The Gutter Digital Library has some intangible heritage online in the form of music. So we have both video of performances and recordings of historical songs that we've digitized from old records.
Okay. So in continuation with the same question, there is another question. Is digital archives also evolving towards that direction of intangible heritage? Is digital archives also evolving towards that direction?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's the thing with archives, traditional archives, is that it was they had perhaps a limited ability to document intangible heritage. Of course, increasingly now, since the mid-20th century, there's been an increasing effort to document intangible heritage by recording, interviewing, photographing, that sort of thing. But it does present a technological challenge, because if I could give you an example of the Gutter Digital Library, if you want to place the, let's say, a sound recording on your digital repository, that sound recording is discoverable through the digital repository, and of course through Google searches. But if you really want it to be discoverable, you need to upload it to SoundCloud, which is sort of the leading online sort of repository for all sound. And so that's what we have done. We've uploaded our recordings to SoundCloud so that it can reach a much wider audience. In the same way with video, if you upload videos to your repository, fine, it's discoverable through Google and on your repository, but it's so much more accessible if you also upload it to YouTube and then link that in to your repository. So often this is a technological challenge that we are facing and many others are facing. You usually have to work with YouTube and SoundCloud and other platforms and integrate them in there. But we think that when you bring in intangible heritage, or you bring in multimedia, that's another way of looking at it, it makes the archives more dynamic, or more importantly, what the archives are trying to document, it makes the subject matter more dynamic, more interesting. Wouldn't it be wonderful when looking at a family archive, let's say merchant families, you can not only read their documents, but you can see their photographs, you can listen to interviews with members of the family, and you can watch videos about the family as well. And then from that, you can take notice other things as well. Regional dialects, for example, language, which is something that disappears over time. So archives are trying to be more comprehensive as a result. Yes.
Okay, sir. There are a lot of student teachers, those who are attending this faculty development program. And when you look at archives, traditionally you feel that is not something which is within our reach. But with digital archives, things are going to be within our reach. And we can surely and definitely use them in our classroom. So do you have any success or motivating stories to tell the student teachers how beautifully it can be used, or must have been some stories there? So can you just share one or two examples or case studies with us where they have used a digital archives approach in classroom teaching?
Oh, okay. Well, one of the approaches that I didn't touch on this, but one of the approaches I always take in as an historian when teaching students is it's a fundamental principle. You go from the known to the unknown. And one of the best things you can do with archival research, if you really want to connect your students to it, is research something that's about their own history, their own families. So I, for example, am a historian of the Arabian Peninsula, of the Gulf region. One of the things I work on is merchant families and ruling families. And so in teaching my courses on the history of the region, often I would have students from the region itself. In fact, I used to teach at the American University of Sharjah in the United Arab Emirates. And 90% of my students in those classes were Emiratis, Omanis, Bahrainis, Kuwaitis, and they were from some of these merchant families. So my student assignments would be write your family history. So with the Gutter Digital Library, that's possible. You can assign family histories for the students, and that will be highly motivating for them because they will immediately take an interest in the subject. So I would, but you can do this with so many other things too. So that's one approach I would recommend is connecting them personally to the material. That also will inform your selection of the archive that you want to use. So if, for example, using in India, the National Archive of India website, choose a topic that will, or give the students enough leeway to choose a topic that touches on them personally. So after going through the exercise of how to interpret documents, how to find them, how to deconstruct them, then choose assignments that connect them to something more personal. And then when it comes to the homework, let them choose something, or indeed make it a requirement that they choose something about their own family or their own community, their own town, their own institution. Oh, sorry, you're on mute.
Okay. So there is something called teacher preparedness and student preparedness. Okay, so when we use this digital archives approach in our classroom teaching, so do you have any tips for teachers? How do we go about this particular digital archives in classroom when it comes to teacher preparedness or student preparedness?
Ah, okay. Well, just a few things that come to mind. We've all given PowerPoint presentations at conferences, and they always have glitches. You always are on the phone. Where's IT? You need IT here to help with the setup, right? Guaranteed that is going to happen if you're using either an online platform like this. As you saw the glitch, I had to exit Zoom so I could tick the box that would allow me to share screen and then re-enter. So you have to do a rehearsal, a dress rehearsal, make sure everything works. I think that's the most important lesson to learn. Secondly, think about the students. What resources do they need? Do they all need to have laptops? Ensure that they do. Sometimes some students don't. Or is it sufficient that you could go to the computer room, computer lab, and do the exercise in the computer lab? That might be easier because then you can have an IT specialist on call. I recommend that. And they're standing by to help if there's any glitches. Finally, when it comes to the background for the subject, I think it's really important that the students do some reading. So like any subject, it's no different. You need to ensure that they do the readings beforehand, and you have a lecture about it as well. They can't just simply dive into it without any background.
Digital archive approach in classroom teaching. What are the significance as far as child's personality is concerned when child is learning through digital archives perspective or approach? Is there anything to share as far as students are concerned, future citizens are concerned?
Sorry, I don't follow that question. Yeah. Could you?
Yeah, digital archives approach in the classroom, how far it will benefit in molding the future citizens of the nation?
Well, quite significantly. I mean, we're now well into the digital age. But often we're not teaching digital literacy. And so it's incumbent upon all of us, especially as teachers, to learn the latest techniques. I mean, we all use various systems like Moodle or Blackboard when doing an online classroom page with all the assigned readings, the syllabi, with links to videos and things like that. But there's so much more you can do to enrich the experience for your students. And so it's incumbent upon all of us to keep up with the latest developments and educate yourself. Lots of materials available on YouTube teaching you how to do this, that, and the other thing. So I'd recommend that you be proactive about this and incorporate it. Of course, now all this was thrust upon us with the COVID-19 lockdown. Now everybody has to do it. If you weren't working with these digital tools before, now you're required to. There's no escaping it. And I think this has shown everybody that this is the way of the future. There are limits, of course, to not teaching in a physical space and seeing people face to face. But this is clearly the way of the future. There's tremendous opportunities because it opens the door to teaching and reaching a wider audience. You don't have to simply have people in your hometown or where you live who are attending class. Now you can, like through this presentation, you can see I'm presenting from Qatar, and there are people listening from across India and around the world. So this technology can really transform things. So I would recommend that you embrace it. Don't wake up one day and realize that you've fallen behind. Other examples are, as teachers, you should set up your own professional website. You should practice what you preach. So set up your professional website, and you can blog about it. You can at the very least, just share best practice articles about using this digital technology, digital archives, and other things like Moodle and Blackboard. And you can post that there. And you can get involved in activities. For example, the one that we have right now, this webinar, but you can get your students to organize things as an assignment. You can ask them to organize some sort of an online event. So the digital age is really breaking down all the walls, and it means that now there are no limits except your imagination. So really, it is going to transform things quite dramatically. A word of caution, though, of course, it can eat up a lot of your time. There's no end to the learning, so that's something that one has to be mindful of.
Since you spoke about Qatar Digital Library, just a question from teachers' point of view: do you get teachers using it to the best of their ability to use it in their classroom? Do you get teachers? Have you any kind of data you all have where teachers are using it for their classroom teaching?
Yeah, so that's something that we want to capture and place online, is testimony, examples of people using it. So I know, for example, that the QDL is being used in classroom at universities in the US and in Europe. So we want to ask those teachers, people I know because they work on the history of the region like me, to do videos, short little videos. You can film with your phone, and then send in some pictures. And then we have a digital team who can then insert the slides. And then you have a nice short 2-3 minute video explaining how it's being used. So we'll be placing that online. So we do know that it's being used. We also have classes requesting or teachers requesting to come to the Qatar National Library where I work. Of course, not since March, since the lockdown. And to give a talk, an introductory talk to the students about what are digital archives and how to use them, the talk I just gave. And I'm really surprised at the uptake amongst the Indian schools here in Dubai, in Doha. There are, the Indian expat community in the Gulf is the largest single community of all the expat communities. I'm Canadian, so we're one of the tiniest. And there's been no end of requests from these Indian schools to bring in their students to learn about the Qatar Digital Library. And what really shocked me was the age of the students. I mean, these are, they're aged 10, 12, 13, 14, and the teachers are teaching them digital literacy, search techniques, and all of that. But they gave them a very specific assignment, and they tied this assignment to something that the government of Qatar had introduced for National Day, which was talking about the contribution of your community to the building of the country. And for the Indian community, that's easy because the Indian community has made a massive contribution to the modern state of Qatar and to all the GCC states. Indian citizens occupy every level of the hierarchy, from construction workers to billionaires, and so there's a lot of stories to tell there. And so I'm very pleased to see that people are taking this up, and also. It's well, I think I'll just end it there. There's more I could say, but. Oh, sorry, you're on mute. I can't hear you. Oh, I still can't hear you. Sorry.
We are indeed privileged, sir, by your presence this evening and consider ourselves fortunate that you could find time to deliver the insightful keynote address. You highlighted the meaning of digital archives. You also spoke about the benefits, the advantages. You spoke about the digital, Qatar Digital Library. You gave us the case study approach for that. Also, you spoke about how to use this in our classroom, and so beautifully, almost all the questions that were put forth, you could answer them to the best of, satisfy our whatever knowledge that we wanted from those answers. You highlighted in your keynote address how digital archives plays an important role in shaping our understanding about the past, and almost convinced that use of digital archives in the classroom can powerfully engage students and introduce them to the joys and sometimes frustrations of archival research. Often there are issues related to funding, location, and time, but digital archives offer possibilities that can help bridge these gaps. Thank you for sharing with us how digital archives give students the opportunity to search, examine, interpret, and assess different types of sources and use different theories, perspectives, and tools to explain and illustrate process of historical change. Once again, I thank you on behalf of Kaash Foundation, on behalf of University of Ottawa, Canada, and on behalf of St. Xavier's Institute of Education for delivering such an insightful keynote address. Thank you very much. Over to me.
Thank you very much.
We would like to thank Dr. James only for accepting our invitation as the keynote speaker. I would also like to thank Professor Elvina for moderating the session. So this was the first day of second International Faculty Development Program. So this was the first day of second International Faculty Development Program. Tomorrow, that is the 4th of August 2020, we have two speakers, Dr. Smita Sehgal, Associate Professor of Department of History, Lady Shri Ram College, University of Delhi, New Delhi. She will be speaking on teaching history, empowering young minds. Our third speaker for the second FDP is Dr. Mandal, Associate Professor, Department of Education and Social Sciences, National Council of Educational Research and Training, New Delhi. The title for the presentation is on Teaching History with a Balanced Approach. This is to inform to all the registered participants are requested to fill in the feedback form as attendance and to document your learning for the day. I'm Megha Patel signing off from the first day of second FDP on Pedagogy of Teaching History to be conducted on collaboration with University of Ottawa, Canada, St. Xavier's Institute of Education from 3rd August to 9th August. Thank you so much for all the viewers, to all the viewers. Thank you.